Hey everyone, back with another episode. This time I'm going to run through CKD, and I know I've done this before, but I did it back a couple months ago before it was really ready to kind of show people. This time it looks a little bit better and the functionality is a bit more fleshed out. I don't think it's, if you are a developer and you want to help contribute and you're watching this and you're like, oh, this looks awesome, which you're probably, let's face it, you're probably going to say that. If you do want to contribute, I would just recommend reaching out to me because there's still a few more things, but who knows? By the time you view this, it might be ready for people to like just contribute by reading the README. So if you check us out on GitHub and you notice the README has some instructions for contributing, that's how. But if it doesn't, then that's why. It's because I'm still kind of working on some final things just to get it in a little bit of a nicer place. But I do at least have something that I can show people. And before I do, I want to kind of run through just why CKD, what's so important about this. Now, the tagline for CKD is Open Web Services for dApps. And when I say dApps, I really mean any website. And any website can become a dApp. And, you won't necessarily have to use CKD in like a web app, but at least for now, that's what I'm focusing on because it's just really easy nowadays, I think, to make a web app for the most part. And the stuff that is hard, I think we can, at least, especially with Ckd, that's what I'm really focusing on is making the hard parts about making making a like fully functional website, taking those hard parts and just kind of putting those like into developers' hands and then letting creators, maybe they're not a developer, but most people can write like XML or HTML, like basic markup. So that's kind of one of the focuses. And that's not even one of the bigger ones, but basically just to make development fun again. I mean, I'm a web developer and I can do a lot of this stuff, but I mean, especially when it comes to launching a new website or something like that, I feel like a lot of my time is spent, number one, just on DevOps type stuff. So, okay, like it's one thing to build the app locally, but then I have to do a whole lot more to just deploy it. Um, and not to mention, I feel like I'm always kind of reinventing the wheel because, yeah, I mean, there are all these companies out there and all these developers, we're all doing our own thing. And I don't think it's necessarily because we want to be, well, part of it's probably, I mean, like I'm guilty of this. I'll write my own blogging engine and stuff like that. But I think as developers, we would love to share code more, but it's kind of hard especially because of that ops piece. Because when it comes to deploying the code, we're deploying it in all of these different places. If we had the same sort of, I don't know, I'll stop talking about this because I do want to get to benefits that just regular people will see. But yeah, that's a big part of it is making development fun again. The big one for just your average person is going to be owning your identity. And I think right now, a big dynamic on the web is that, and just in general in life, is that we have all these entities that basically identify us for us. So they'll give us an ID that they control. And I don't know, it really puts the power in these giant, whether it's a corporation or a government or really anything that's trying to control what you do and control you. They can control you through this ID if they want to. I'm not saying like any of these tech companies are necessarily bad, but I think it'd be a good idea to put the power back in the people's hands, right? That's a big thing is making it so that when we identify ourselves or log in on a website, we're using an ID that we control and not one that's controlled by some centralized corporation somewhere. And I'll kind of show you that a little bit. And that lets us, a big one with that too, this kind of just comes along, is that we can ditch passwords. And once we have our identity set up on our computer within CKD, then what we can do is just sign in with WebAuthn. And most people probably don't know what WebAuthn is, but it'll basically let you sign into a website using Touch ID, or I think on Mac you can also use just your like laptop's password or something like that. So yeah, that'll be really nice. And the big, well, I guess not the big one, but the last big one is decoupling data, apps, and you. And this kind of goes a little bit along with making development fun again, but and also a little bit with own your identity. But right now, everything is coupled together. So if you want to, I mean, for the most part, if you want to put a video online today, you're probably going to go to YouTube, which is controlled by Google, and it's not very decentralized. It's like YouTube's just kind of in control of video on the internet. Like, it's probably not the best situation. So if we can decouple data, apps, and like your identity, I think that'd be huge because let's say um, YouTube has an app, but somebody else can make a better interface for video on the internet. Um, Different developers can then make apps for these shared services and not have to reinvent the wheel. And there's that whole like network effect. So even if you have a better app than YouTube, how are you going to get all of that data and the users over? Because they're coupled to YouTube, they're under YouTube's control. So that I think is the last big one. So I think I am going to, oh man, I think I'm going to dive into this and hopefully it doesn't just explode. All right, so I have a website, stack.com, that I'm developing, and what I would like to do is integrate Ckd, so make it so that you can sign in with Ckd, and then right now I don't really have too much functionality as far as services go, so this service is just going to display my wallet's like balance and I think maybe some other info. But yeah, let's get started. So I have this page on stack.com, it's the M page, and I think I'm just going to replace this stuff right here with the sign in button and then the wallet info. And this is kind of a work in progress. Again, it's not fully functional. But yeah, so I have stack.com right here, and I'm just going to start up a development server. And this is actually the live version. I'm going to close this and just open up my development version. And in the development version, I have done a little bit of work in advance. So you'll notice all we have is the logo, and then we got some room to do some stuff. So if we go to the M page, and if you're not a developer, yeah, this is a Next.js website. You can look that up. It's actually pretty easy to pick up if you're just starting. I won't go into it too much here because we got some other stuff to do. But yeah, so on my M page, what I would like to do is I actually added these components. So I have one for Ckd sign-in and then one for wallet info. So I'm going to display the sign-in button or component. And then I'm also going to display the wallet info component for once they're signed in. So, okay, so now we'll notice that we have we actually have a download button. And the reason that this is displaying is because we don't currently have Ckd running on our machine. So let's actually take a look at the Ckd sign-in component really quick. And this looks kind of messy, but there's not a whole lot going on here. So what we're doing is we're importing the sign-in hook. We're also importing the use client hook. So we're checking to see if and this is actually what's causing the download button to display. So we're checking to see if the client is connected. If it is, we'll display sign in with Ckd. Otherwise, we'll display download. And right now I just have it alerting. It's currently not an app that you can download. It's just a developer preview. So if you go to our GitHub, you'll be able to download it and run it on your machine at your own risk. But yeah, in the future, it's going to be an app that you can just download. So this is what will be displayed to users until they download and run the app on their machine. And I'm actually going to simulate that. And actually, let's see. Do side by side. Okay, so the command to start this is just mix phx.server. And we did get some errors there. Those are actually expected. But one thing you'll notice when you start it up is you'll get this startup token. And this will not be something that end users will have to do once it is an application. This is for security reasons just during this developer preview. So I am going to, just real quick, this is the window with the Ckd, we'll just call it the Ckd app. Right now it's running in a web browser, but eventually it will run just in an application. So I'm going to enter the startup token, and again, you won't need that in the future. And now this error, and you'll actually notice it did change to sign in with Ckd because we are connected to the Ckd server, but we are having some errors. And The errors are because we're trying to use this wallet info channel before we've signed in. So let's go. Sorry. Okay, so we're displaying the wallet info component right here, but we haven't really checked if we're signed in yet. So the way that we can do that is we can import we'll import and use the client hook. And that's pretty cool. So you can get it to auto import for you. And if I look at the variable that I've created here, it actually has some types on it too. So if you want, you could go to, I think, the type definition for this. And so we can see what is available on this client hook, and we have a connected property, and then we also we can check to see if the connection has a token, and that's the way that we'll be able to tell if we're logged in. So, and basically what this code means is if the token is set, then we'll display the wallet info. So I just saved that. Okay, now let's see what happens when we sign in with Ckd. So it's asking me if I can use Touch ID to basically create a login. Well, that's good to know. I guess it doesn't work in Safari, so let's switch over to Brave real quick. Okay, so let's try Brave. Okay, so that just worked. This is a little confusing. I actually could do a little bit better with the messaging. We would be able to display to the user that, hey, you did just create a login, but we need basically whoever installed the app, we need them to approve that login for like doing its thing. So over here, this is where the user who installed the app, or in our case, just opened it in a web browser, this is where they can authorize that login to do stuff. So all I have to do over here, and this will eventually get more like fine-grained. We could add like permissions and stuff like that, but right now it's just kind of like it gets access to everything, which isn't really much. It just shows wallet info, but there we go. I just authorized that login, and then immediately you can see that it's now displaying the address for that wallet and then the balance, and I actually think I might have that balance hard-coded. It's a good example. So now, and this is kind of cool, so the Ckd React library, and I should have gone through, I'll go through the other files a little bit more. I kind of jumped right into things, but it's got types on it. So notice you can see as soon as I do data dot, and it kind of tells us everything on here. So I'll just go with the balance, save that file, and now you can see it's updated. It's not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 anymore. Now jumping back to the other components in here, I'm trying to think if there's anything else I really need to go over. Oh yeah, so in your Next.js application, in your _app file, the only thing you'll need to do is import this Ckd provider and wrap your application in it, and that will take care of a lot of the, I won't really get too into it, but that'll take care of like managing like reconnecting when you get a new token and stuff like that. And then aside from that, I don't think there's really too much else. Obviously, you'll do a yarn add or npm install Ckd React if you're using React. And right now we only have bindings for React, and then we have kind of like a plain like Ckd-web client. So if you wanted to do it for another framework, you could basically probably copy what we're doing in the React thing. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be super simple. So as far as the developer is concerned, they'll do yarn add Ckd React or npm install Ckd React. Then they'll need to go into their _app.js file. They will import the Ckd provider, and I mean, it's really that easy. You don't really have to do much. And then, yeah, I mean, again, so these components, although there is a little bit going on in here, it's not too complicating once you sort of get the hang of it and how these things will work, especially when, with channel APIs, one thing that I really like about them is that they manage state for you. So one of the biggest pains about being a web developer, in my opinion, is usually when it comes to interacting with APIs and stuff like that and communicating from the web browser to the server, it's all of the state management that you have to do because there are all these different scenarios and conditions, and it's usually not as easy as it initially seems like it will be. Whereas with channel APIs, because the API layer itself is stateful, as opposed to like REST or HTTP where it's stateless, because the API layer manages state for you, that's just another thing that you don't have to worry about. So I mean, add that onto like ops as another thing that developers don't have to worry about. Um, and yeah, I was kind of blabbing on about that, but yeah, I mean, basically these components that I have here, like the CKD sign-in and the wallet info component, they're not that hard to make once you get the hang of it. And also, I don't even think we'll necessarily need everyone to make their own CKD sign-in component or wallet info component. We can just have, whether it's built into the CKD React library or it's just community driven. Yeah, I think this is going to be pretty sweet. So with that said, I guess a big part of the reason that I'm actually doing this video is, number one, to get you interested. So, I mean, I'm sure if you're listening still, you're probably at least somewhat interested and hopefully want to see this project succeed. And what I think I'm going to do, and I don't think I'm approved on GitHub yet, but I set up a GitHub sponsors page. And so if you go to, I think right now, actually, if you go to ckd.dev, it'll just redirect you to the GitHub sponsors page. So if you go there, hopefully I've been approved by the time you see this. If you go there, I think what I'm going to do is just give people a way to support, whether it's like financially or through like contributing code or stuff like that. Give people ways to help the project. And if you've done something that like demonstrates that you like care about the project, want to help it succeed, then I think it'd be cool to have like a chat room of some sort. And I think I'm going to a chat room that like everyone who I don't know is interested in CKD can join. I think we'll have a chat room, and then I don't know exactly what the criteria will be to join, but I think if you do like a GitHub sponsorship, I think that would be an easy one. What I'm really trying to do is just make it so that not just like everybody joins, and it's just kind of like you got a bunch of people in there who saw a video and just like don't really care that much. I want people in there who actually care. And so yeah, whether it's like I don't know, doing like a donation or like contributing code or just, I don't know. We'll see. But that's kind of what I'm thinking as far as letting people support it. I think we're going to call it the Deprcate. And I actually didn't really get into this. It's probably a good thing to talk about at the end because I don't know if too many people like care that much about it. But a big part of the reason why Stacked exists as a company and why CKD exists is because, I don't know, like when I look at the state of the world right now, I feel like a lot of our energy is going into things that we can't control. And I think I don't know, it's like there's no real alternative to whether it's big tech or big government or all these different things that people are unhappy with. I feel like we put a lot of our energy into trying to change them. These systems that we don't really control, yeah, sure, I probably shouldn't go too much into this because it'll just make people mad, but I mean, we get to vote every 4 years, but I mean, that's once every 4 years, and it's also just a binary black and white, like red team or blue team. And at least when I talk to people, I mean, most of the time, like people usually have their own issue that they're interested in. It's not black and white. It's not just like, oh, you're on this team or that team. It's usually people have something that's unique to them that they want to do. And so usually, unfortunately, it kind of, at least the way like we're told to, I don't know, go out and fulfill our purpose in the world is to take that purpose and then basically, I don't know, try and find red team or blue team, which one goes closest with that purpose, which one aligns with that purpose. And then in the end, it feels like a lot of the times you just kind of give up that purpose just to fit into the group. And yeah, I don't know, it's just the whole thing doesn't really make sense to me. So getting back to deprecate it, the word, and the reason I'm spelling it deprecate is because I don't want it to be confused with deprecate as in like, I don't know, just like talking down about things. I mean deprecate in the like programming sense of the word. So in computer programming, if you're familiar, when there's an old method that's just, I don't know, it's been around for years, and it's just not really doing the best job anymore, like requirements have changed and a whole lot's gone on. So you'll want to eventually replace that method. And instead of going into that old method, usually it's like, I don't know, when you go into your old code, it's like, oh man, this is like a huge file. Who knows like what's going on in here? A lot of times, instead of going back into this old thing and trying to update it to work with these drastically different requirements, you'll just say, hey, we'll keep the old version around, but we're going to mark it as deprecated, which means I wouldn't rely on this for anything new, but I mean, if you're using it, it's still here, but we're going to build something completely new. And so that's sort of the mentality behind Deprecate It, is that, you know, instead of putting all our energy into focusing on things that we can't control and then basically begging other people to build things how like we think they should be built, we're really asking for, like, it's popular to bag on politicians, but I mean, they really have an impossible job. And a lot of these, I don't know, I think that goes for like a lot of people. They just have impossible jobs, and maybe we should stop asking them to do impossible jobs and just do the things that are important to us ourselves so that we don't have to rely on some savior. Um, and yeah, I mean, I guess that is kind of the gist of it. Yeah, so I mean that's why I kind of am thinking of calling it Depper Chat, because that's kind of the mentality behind the chat is we're building some new stuff. We want to give people an out, and yeah, check us out. Go to, I think I'm just gonna put some links up here. I don't have all of them off the top of my head, but basically stack.com, stackd.com. That's the, I don't know, that's the thing I'm trying to build with Ckd. And then ckd.dev will eventually have the Ckd dev site, but right now I think it's just going to direct to the GitHub. So yeah, I'd probably go to ckd.dev, and then we're also on Twitter. And yeah, I think that's about it. So I will talk to you later.